Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining another Champions Lunch with Fleet Planner. Today, I'm joined with Sonya, who is the CEO of a non-profit organisation called Women in Transport. Their focus is obviously to empower women to kind of maximise their potential within the transport industry and to work on things like the gender pay gap and the underrepresentation of women in the transport industry. In terms of statistics for those watching who might be interested, 47% of women make up the UK workforce, and in the transport sector, that only accounts for 20% of women. So there is a very clear disparity, and the transport industry is dominated by men. So that is something that your organisation, that your focuses on, is aiming to kind of help build up the representation of women in that way. I just thought, in terms of starting, if you could talk us through in a bit more detail about what Women in Transport does to help women within the industry, and that can be with regards to campaigning against like new legislation that you might want to help support women in that way, and then internally, what kind of projects do you have going that helps to empower women within the sector as well?
Thanks very much, Jasmine. So yeah, Women in Transport, as you said, a non-profit. So we've been around for 16 years, and predominantly we're a membership network. We're open to everybody, but our mission is very much to support the professional development of women working in the transport sector. And we do that through a very varied and extensive events program. And that offers things like professional development around soft skills, technical topics, and a lot in the last year around resilience. And because of COVID, that's all been virtual. So we have 4 events a month at least, as well as partnership events and discounts. And then we offer mentoring, an annual mentoring program, the advanced mentoring program, which has been going for 4 years and is co-designed and co-delivered by myself and Angela Gainsford, who's a long-term member of Women in Transport. And we've just launched the Lead Development Programme, which is a leadership development programme targeted at women working in the transport sector who are looking to progress their careers. And it gives them an opportunity to meet a diverse cohort across the transport sector, across modes, and to build their leadership skills in a targeted way. We also are secretariat for the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Women in Transport. So quite rightly through that, you were saying about campaigning for gender balance. So the APPG is really our vehicle for that. And most recently in March for International Women's Day, we released a white paper that was co-authored by Jo Field, who's now our president, and Heba Hebda, who they did a primary piece of research and produced this white paper that sets out the gender perceptions of women and men working in transport, and also some best practice case studies around what we can do around retention, recruitment, and progression of women in the transport sector, and some recommendations for employers and government, and also for us as an organisation around how we can further support women and increase representation in transport.
What do you think is one of the main reasons why women don't enter the industry or decide to pursue a career in the transport industry? We have done a poll, which I'll present on the screen for those watching. Obviously, it was a very small sample size of people that participate in it, so it won't be completely representative of everyone's views on the matter on why women don't enter. But if you had one thing that you think is significant in determining why there's such an underrepresentation of women in the industry, what would you say that is?
It's a perception problem mostly. So our research from the APPG showed that 93% of women agreed or strongly agreed that transport is typically viewed as a male-dominated industry. Yeah. And there's a lot of unconscious bias, and that's played out in other research from things like the Strategic Task Force for Apprenticeships in Transport. So we know that really the jobs in transport are seen as taken by men.
Definitely. I think that was very clear in the results that we saw as well, even just with a group of people who voted. So for those watching as well, if you have questions when we present this or throughout, then please feel free to just drop them down in the comments and I can show Sonya as well. But I thought just out of interest, I could show those who wanted to have a look at the outcome of our poll for a question that I've kind of posed to you, Sonya, which was it was basically why do you think women are so underrepresented in the transport industry? And there were different options, as you said, which touches on the first one. The industry is dominated by men, so it's a perception thing. Maybe young girls growing up don't see or find role models who work within the transport industry, and then don't strive to go down that route in that sector. And what was quite significant was that we had 17 men who also actually agreed. The most amount of men who voted agreed that it was the fact that the industry is dominated by men, which was why women are so underrepresented in the transport industry. What do you think about the idea that another option which wasn't on there, which we saw, was the flexibility of job opportunities for women in the transport industry? So women who have child responsibilities, who are looking after elderlies. What's your view on that in terms of its impact on the representation of women as well? And do you think it's changing now that we've got more awareness about it?
So it's two things really. I think one, absolutely the lack of flexibility within the industry as a whole, and that's not just a transport thing. That's a workplace thing really, around the structures that are the way we're set up. But because a lot of the frontline roles will see a set shift patterns, and they're not easily movable. It requires a big change to do something like that. If you look at things like some of the driving jobs, and there aren't really the facilities as well. So it's not just about the hours of work, it's actually about the facilities that are behind that, what welfare facilities are there. And then once you're in those roles, if you're the only person, so if you're in a minority in that group, so if you're the only woman, well, there isn't really an incentive to create specific facilities or uniform or tools or whatever it might be for that only. Then in terms of whether it's changing or not, COVID is having an impact for sure. You know, there is an opportunity there. We talk about more flexibility, more empathy, the idea that more jobs are, you know, we've proven over the last year that more jobs can be done remotely or differently or more flexibly. And when perhaps becoming more empathetic around people's particular situations. Of course, transport workers have been essential workers, they're frontline workers, key workers during this pandemic. So they've pretty much carried on more or less as normal with changes to, you know, the health and safety and to the structure and working from home if they're able to. As we move forward into maybe more hybrid working and settle into whatever our standard working practices are going to be going forward, we'll see whether there's any real change, permanent change to the way we work and to those structures. But the reality is that progress for women is agonisingly slow. So we know that on a global level, it will take 200 years still to close the gender gap. I mean, that's incredibly, is an incredible figure when we think about this and how long we've had gender issues on the agenda and diversity and inclusion on the agenda. And the reality is that COVID disproportionately impacts on women because of the childcare or the caring burden. So women do more of the domestic load. It's not to say that men aren't affected and that men don't have those roles as well, but women are disproportionately affected. And ultimately, COVID could see us take double the amount of time again to catch up with where we were before COVID hit us.
Do you think that You mentioned a really good point about the conditions that kind of deters women from going into the transport industry. Do you think that that is something that could actually change and then encourage women to apply for jobs in the industry? Because it seems, as you said, if there's so few opportunities and there's only one woman applying for a job that 10 men do, that they're not going to be willing to make such a significant change in the working conditions for just one person. So is it going to be possible or are there other ways that will be more significant then in helping women get their foot into the transport industry or see the industry in a different light?
So I think there's no silver bullet. There's no magic solution to what is effectively a systemic issue. There are lots of things that we can do, and there are lots of companies doing really good things too. So it's not all bad. In the white paper, you said there's a number of companies doing fantastic things. Let's go ahead. Whole Trains has got really bucked the trend. They're a gender balanced business, and they've got over 30% of their train drivers are women. So there are companies out there that have actually gone about looking at diversity, inclusion, and gender balance within their organisations and setting targets and putting in place specific measures, and they're proving that it can be done and you can be a more profitable business. If you look at the McKinsey data around why diversity matters, we know that more diverse businesses, both from a gender and ethnicity perspective, perform better. So there's an economic imperative there. It's not just the right thing to do. It actually makes economic sense from a business perspective. Now, there are lots of different things and lots of different ways that you can address the issue. It's the facilities are one. There's role modelling. There's doing early learning, careers modelling, showcasing what the opportunities are, and then specific targeted measures in terms of mentoring, reverse mentoring, sponsorship, things around recruitment and how we change that image perception, what we do to build culture. But I think the danger is always that we see diversity and inclusion as this tick box exercise, that we think, okay, well, we've done this and we've solved the issue because we see lots of more women coming in at entry level, and we think that then we've solved the gender issue. But actually, we haven't looked at every single level of our organisation and also the pipeline coming through to make sure that that's an ongoing process. The work's never going to be finished.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, it's not just one thing to look at how many women you've got in internship level, entry level jobs, but also those who have got the top leadership roles within an organisation. And it's definitely clear with a lot of businesses and companies in the transport industry that you don't see many women at all in the company or in leadership positions, which is not in the interest of actually a business who could be very successful as well, as you mentioned. There has been a lot of comments about other reasons why women don't put themselves forward. Things like the pay. Do you think that this will be something that is actually more likely to change now that there are campaigns to get more better salaries that will incentivize women to take on a role like that? Because that is a very important factor especially after the pandemic, for people who want to support their families or excel in their own career.
I think so. There's a couple of things on pay. So obviously there's the gender pay gap, and gender pay gap reporting has been paused during COVID, which I actually think gender pay gap reporting was a really good stick to a certain extent. It was something that was providing transparency and providing data-driven reasons for companies to take a really hard look at what they were doing and to put in place measures to address it. In terms of paying conditions, across the transport sector, actually, obviously depends on what job you're in as to whether, you see that favourably or not. And obviously transport covers a whole range of different modes and disciplines and jobs. So I actually think transport in general is a well-paid profession. Once you're in, there's good opportunities to progress and to make a difference, and it can be really welcoming. But there's the challenge in how do you get in the first place, and how do you get visibility as a minority within the workforce of the opportunities that there are and the opportunity for promotion, and you get up the ladder to the better paying roles, really. So there's a few things there to unpick in terms of pay. I do think there's work to be done around transparency in general if we think about recruitment and retention. So, I have certainly anecdotally heard about women being paid significantly less than men to do exactly the same job with similar experience. And if you look for data around this, there's a really good report from the government, from the Equalities Commission, around the barriers and progressions for women working in general. And sometimes we think about the motherhood penalty, the idea that having a child would impact on your ability to earn more and to progress. But actually that report shows that even if a woman doesn't have a child and has the same behaviours as a man in the workplace, they still end up behind in terms of men when it comes to pay and progression if you took them from 10 years at the same rate. So it's not just, there are multi-layers of reasons why women don't end up having the same pay and progression as men.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think with that, it's really difficult to think about how you could implement things to encourage or help women to make it up to those higher positions. I guess maybe policies within the organisation to help excel women into those roles in the same way that men have been able to do, or get a higher salary over the years. What would your advice be to women looking to have a career in the industry, but with the points we've mentioned as well, they're concerned that even if they're working really hard, they have been in the industry for the same amount of time as a man, but they find that they're actually almost reached a stalemate in their career while they're seeing men go further up. What kind of things, or I know that you have a mentoring program at the Women in Transport as well. Would that be something that would help women in a position like that?
Mm-hmm. I think there are a number of things. So there's mentoring, coaching, things like our leadership program, so the leadership program, which is a real package of looking at building your network. So making sure you've got a network of people, and that's not just women, but men as well, because male allies are really important in this process, around you who can really support and empower you and help nurture your career. Really developing the skills that you need to navigate in the workplace and not be that only one there. I think in terms of taking control of your own career is really important. So being your own best advocate and ambassador for your career, and really looking at it from a lens of what do I want to get out of this? Is this where I want to be? Where do I want to go next? And really taking that time for self-reflection is really important. I think making others aware that you want to progress within an organisation, that you've got a direction of travel. So talking to your line manager, talking to others. It's not always comfortable for us as women to talk about our own achievements and to find an authentic way to discuss ourselves and what we want to do and we want to get out of the workplace. But unfortunately, the workplace is set up with men in mind, and with that that culture of being much more comfortable about self-promotion. So it's finding a way that works for you, that you can authentically talk about that and look for those opportunities, and look for somebody to sponsor you through your organisation, look for mentors and people that role models, and that can be men and women within your organisation who can help you up the next career ladder. Look for opportunities, as many as you can, for development. I joined Women in Transport because I felt at the time in my career I was a transport planner. I felt like I didn't have the opportunities I wanted for professional development and network, and it's taken me on a journey that I never could have expected. So, obviously, I would say join Women in Transport. But, that made a difference for me.
Definitely, that's some really good advice for women out there who don't know what to do with where they are in the transport industry as well, or looking to go in. We've spoken a lot about the not responsibility, but what women can do to help make themselves more represented within the industry. What do you think men can do to help that as well and facilitate that? Because it's got to be a joint process, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. With the transport industry being so male dominated, and for the most part, men are in those decision-making positions. So really having gender balance benefits everybody in transport, and we need more women to be active and participating and attracted to transport in order to fill the skills gap that we have. So, we have fantastic male allies within Women in Transport. So about 8% of our membership is men, and we've got a number of men on our board and within our volunteer team. And what I found really good is their willingness to understand the issues that women face in the sector, to understand, to try and put themselves in their shoes, to actively listen to the experiences of those women and to the issues that they face, and put themselves in, maybe be uncomfortable, allow themselves to be uncomfortable and be willing to be that voice. If you're in the room and people, you're seeing behaviour that you don't think is right. We saw in our white paper research that 70% of women had experienced discriminatory behaviour in the workplace, in transport, either directed at them or they'd seen it directed at others. So being comfortable calling out that behaviour, because only by doing that are we going to tackle the culture and make it more welcoming and more inclusive for others. So being part of the conversation and standing up, stand up and say, if you're asked to be on a panel and you're the only man, it's an all male panel and there's no diversity in it, challenge that.
Yeah, that comes back to your point about transparency, doesn't it, within the organisation? I think for men watching this, it's really important to be transparent with the women you work with, that if there is something that makes them uncomfortable, if they are looking to excel and move up, that they feel comfortable to go to you or to anyone in a sector that is, as we've mentioned many times, dominated by men, comfortable to say that. And if that comes in the form of making sure that there's a policy to schedule more kind of meetings with your colleagues all round so that they can vocalize those things, then maybe that will have a more meaningful effect on finding more women in higher positions within the transport industry as well. I think 70% experiencing discrimination to some extent, either directly or indirectly, is staggering, and it shouldn't be the case really at all. So hopefully this will be something that men in the transport industry are watching and think, oh, that's not great, and I would like to do something as well to help this, and help for any business that I work in to give those women who deserve it the opportunity to move their way up. What was the one thing that you feel is the most centered purpose or value that you have, that you promote and say about the women in transport in terms of what they do to help women in the transport industry?
So our central purpose is to advance women working in transport, to support their professional development. And that's the heart of what we do as an organisation, and then what that looks like in terms of outcomes and all the things that we've discussed. So if we think about everything that advances and empowers women is at the heart of what Women in Transport does. What I would say is, to add to that, is that Women in Transport is this incredible community, of people who genuinely care about each other and their careers and really want to support each other. It's an incredibly welcoming, inclusive environment, and you get so much energy from that positivity.
Definitely, I think that's a really good thing to mention to those watching as well, that joining the Women in Transport can be a community of women who can talk about their experiences, and if you can share those experiences, then there will always be new things that you can take from that can be implemented in the kind of mentoring schemes you have, or the leadership program you have. So yeah, that's great. Did you have any last pieces of advice to or something that you'd like to mention that's really significant to you about Women in Transport? I think it's a good point to mention to those watching that Women in Transport, your organisation has grown pretty rapidly in the last few months as well. So it is an organisation that even if you're not a board member, that if you're a part of is growing and will have a good impact on the industry. So did you have any last points you'd like to make to those watching that we haven't covered?
I think just that, whatever, Women in Transport is definitely my tribe and my community, and it's made a huge difference to me to be part of it. I think if you're a woman or a man, or however you identify, and you're working in the transport sector, I think or even if you're outside the sector, transport is a fantastic sector to work in. That's what I'd say. I truly believe, I'm always saying this, that there is a job for everybody in transport, because it really does have such diversity of opportunity. And once you're in, I think it can be an incredibly welcoming place to be and to progress. Like, we do have, without whitewashing, we do have challenges around the perception and the image, but there are people really willing to do something different. And I believe that if we work together, we can make a difference.
Definitely. I think that a really nice point about this as well is that hopefully we've got a lot of men or transport managers who are mostly our men as well, who are watching this and think about ways they can help to rebalance the gender divide in this industry. And I just wanted to make a point of so Women in Transport, they do run many events throughout every week, every month. And I know that the next one they've got coming up is when they're joined with a previous traffic commissioner on the 8th of June. Scotland's traffic commissioner from 2003 to 2019 will be joining for a conversation. This would be probably, I know you welcome men and women to these events, but if you'd like to touch on that a bit before we leave, I think this will be a really great event. I work with the traffic commissioner a lot, and it's lovely to hear and listen to someone who has been in a very senior role in the transport industry as well.
Yeah, so we've got that event coming up on the 8th of June by our fantastic Scotland Hub. So Jane Aiken will be joining us for a conversation. So I think this is just one of the ways that we're trying to raise the visibility of the opportunity and the senior women that have worked in the transport sector, for them to share their experience and their knowledge and their journey, really. And we've also got something up for International Women in Engineering Day around the rail industry as well. So a couple of senior women within the sector talking about their experience and how COVID's impacted on them. So that's worth checking out in June.
Perfect. In terms of the mentoring scheme and also membership, how do people join the Women in Transport? And is there any requirements to enter the mentorship program as well?
So joining Women in Transport is dead simple. It's just £60 for the year, and there's a few concessions for various organisations, and you just sign up online via our website at womenintransport.com. Literally takes minutes, and the only requirement is that you work in transport. Then you get access to all of the membership benefits. In terms of the mentoring program, it's open annually for applications. Only women are allowed to be mentees, and they have to be a member of Women in Transport, but you can work in any aspect of transport and be at any level to apply. You apply, and then you're chosen based on the quality of your application and our ability to match you. Mentors are welcome. Everyone's welcome to be a mentor, ideally a senior manager and above, and they can be from any aspect of transport, and it's open to men and women. Applications will be open around October. We're actually just in the process now of looking for sponsors for next year's programme. So if anybody's interested in that, they can get in touch with me.
Perfect. So thank you for joining me today, Sonya. It's been really nice to talk about all of the different things that contribute to the underrepresentation of women in the transport industry, but more importantly, what you can do to help reduce that and build the representation of women in the transport industry. As you said, there is many years of probably a lot of hard work to get where we should be, but the more we do and the more we can join together and work collaboratively on the matter, the quicker that change will come about. So thank you for watching, everyone. If there are any questions that people do have afterwards, you can comment on the post, and I'm sure if there was something that you wanted to inquire, there are definitely ways you can do that on Women in Transport Online as well. And if you needed to get referred on anywhere, then you can contact Fleet Planner as well. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed it, please like and subscribe it. And we'll be back soon with another Champions Lunch. So thank you again, Sonya. And it was lovely speaking to you today.
Thanks so much, Jasmine.